The Tyluf people were known across the galaxy as gods. Their technology was unmatched, and their cities gleamed with a beauty that left all who visited in awe. The Tylofs had always believed that they were the highest form of life in the universe. They ruled over countless planets, with many species looking to them for guidance and worship. For centuries, the Tylofs had built their empire, their belief in their divinity never shaken. But everything changed the day a strange discovery was made deep within their galaxy. A team of Tylof archaeologists had been sent to investigate a new set of ruins found on a distant, barren world. The ruins were unlike anything that Tylofs had seen before. Ancient stone structures, covered in faded symbols, lay scattered across the planet's surface. At first, the archaeologists thought it was just another relic from a long-lost species, but something about the symbols felt different. They were familiar. They resembled the shapes of beings they had never encountered before. Humanoid, with features that seemed to match the ancient myths of a race that Tylofs had never fully understood. The lead archaeologist, Nari, carefully brushed away centuries of dust to reveal a set of carvings on a large stone tablet. The symbols were clear now, and Nari's breath caught in her throat. There, etched into the stone, was a figure that looked eerily like a human. The symbol depicted a tall, slender figure with eyes that were both compassionate and stern. It held an object that resembled a tool, pointing toward the sky. Nari had seen something like this before in the old texts, the legends of the creators. Could it be? She whispered to herself. The idea seemed impossible, but the resemblance was undeniable. Her mind raced with questions. Was this truly a message from the past? And if it was, why hadn't anyone ever heard of it before? Nari's discovery caused a ripple across the Tylof world. Soon, the ruins were being excavated in full force. The signs of humanity were everywhere. The carvings were scattered across the planet, some in places where no one could have reached without advanced technology. Whoever had made these, they had been far more advanced than the Tylofs had ever imagined. As the days passed, more discoveries were made. Hidden chambers filled with ancient artifacts were uncovered. And then something incredible happened. In a buried vault, deep beneath the surface, they found a book, an object they could hardly comprehend. It was filled with strange writing, and the symbols were unlike anything that Tylofs had ever seen. Yet there was no mistaking it. The script resembled the language of the creatures known as humans. The Tylofs had always seen themselves as the creators of life across the stars. They had never questioned it, never doubted their place in the universe. But now, standing before this ancient evidence, the reality was setting in. Could it be that humans, the very species that Tylofs had once dismissed as primitive, had created them? The idea was unthinkable, yet the evidence was undeniable. And now, the question loomed large in the minds of every Tylof across the galaxy. How could this be? How had their creators, humans, disappeared from the record of the universe? And why had the Tylofs never known the truth? The discovery of the ancient ruins had shaken the very foundation of Tylof society. Nari, the lead archaeologist, was hailed as a hero, but there was an uncomfortable silence that followed her discovery. The Tylof people had long believed they were the supreme beings of the galaxy. Now they were faced with a reality that no one was ready to accept. Humans, a species they had thought to be primitive, had created them. The news spread quickly across the planet, and soon, a delegation of Tylof leaders gathered in their grand hall, the most prestigious building on their planet. The leaders sat in a circle, each one holding their ceremonial staffs, their eyes fixed on Nari, who stood in the center of the room. "We must find the truth," said Lethis, the high elder of the Tylofs. His voice was calm but heavy with concern. "If these humans truly are our creators, we need to understand why they vanished. Why didn't we remember them? Why did we forget?" The question hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The council had always believed that they were the gods of the universe, their civilization the pinnacle of evolution. But now, they were faced with the uncomfortable possibility that they were not the creators. but the created. Neri stepped forward, holding up a small object in her hand, a human artifact she had found among the ruins. It was a small, worn book filled with strange, detailed illustrations and writing. "I believe this may hold the answers we seek," she said. The council members leaned forward, their interest piqued. The book had no cover, only the ancient script etched into the pages. The writing was a mixture of symbols, some of which the Psylofts could understand, but there were still many unfamiliar characters. "I will send for a human," Neri declared. "We need their help to decipher this text. The answers may lie in their history." The room fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the Psylofts realized that they would need the humans, the very species they had dismissed as primitive, to help them understand their own origins. The decision was made quickly. A message was sent to Earth, and within a matter of weeks, a human representative arrived on the Psyloft planet. Her name was Dr. Marissa Reed, a leading scientist and historian from Earth, known for her expertise in human history and ancient texts. When Dr. Reed stepped off the ship, she was greeted with awe. The Psylofts were known for their towering cities and immense technological advancements, but to Dr. Reed, the sight was overwhelming. The buildings were crafted from materials she had never seen before, their shapes strange yet beautiful. The sky above was tinged with strange colors, a vibrant mix of purples and oranges, which left her breathless. A crowd of Psyloft leaders gathered to meet her, their eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of fear. The meeting was formal, but the tension was palpable. "You're human," said Lethis, his voice low. "Are you truly the creators of the Psylofts? Can you explain what we have uncovered?" Dr. Reed took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had read the reports. She knew what they had discovered, and she was certain that this encounter would change everything. "I can help you," she said calmly. "But first, you must understand something. Humans didn't just create the Psylofts. We made mistakes. And those mistakes, I believe, have led to the world you now live in." The room was quiet as Dr. Marissa Reed stood before the Psyloft Council. The eyes of the most powerful beings in the galaxy were fixed on her, waiting for answers. For a moment, she felt the weight of their gaze, knowing that what she was about to say would change everything. "I know you must have many questions," she began, her voice steady. "But first, you must understand something important. Humans were not perfect creators. We made mistakes. The Psylofts. You were never meant to be gods. You were designed as a species to help us, to assist in our work. But something went wrong, and over time, you lost your memories." The Psyloft leaders exchanged glances. Lethis, the High Elder, was the first to speak. "You claim we were created by humans, but we are gods. We are the rulers of this galaxy. How could a primitive species like humans have the power to create us?" Dr. Reed took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "You weren't meant to be gods. You were designed to be the perfect workers, capable of building and organizing the galaxy's systems. But during your creation, we didn't foresee what would happen. Over time, the memory of your true purpose was erased." Lethis stood tall, his many tentacles rippling with unease. "Why did this happen? Why did we forget? And why did we believe ourselves to be gods?" Dr. Reed lowered her gaze to the ancient book in her hands, then looked up at the council. "The truth is, when humanity first created the Psylofts, we used advanced genetic engineering to give you intelligence, strength, and endurance. But we never anticipated how your society would evolve. Over time, you grew stronger and more independent. Your creators, humans, disappeared from your records, and your memories of us were erased." Neri, the archaeologist who had first uncovered the ruins, stepped forward. "But why did we worship ourselves as gods? We thought we were the creators of the universe, of life itself." Dr. Reed's expression softened. The Psylofts were designed to believe they were the creators, to help prevent a rebellion. But over time, that belief became so strong that it replaced the truth. "We never expected you to forget us. But we never planned on humanity disappearing either. A heavy silence settled over the room as the weight of Dr. Reed's words sank in. For centuries, the Psylofts had believed that they were the divine rulers of the galaxy. They had created entire civilizations and ruled with an iron fist, all while believing that they were the ones who had brought life to the stars. Now they were faced with the shocking truth that they had been created by humans, a species they had long considered beneath them. Lethus turned away from the group, his mind racing. The truth was difficult to accept. How could they have been so wrong for so long? How do we move forward? Lethus asked quietly, his voice filled with doubt. What is our place now that we know we were created? Dr. Reed stepped forward and placed a hand on the stone table, her voice calm but firm. Your place is still important. You are not just tools. You are more than that. You have the potential to be great, but you must first accept the truth about who you are and where you came from. The room was filled with a quiet hum as the Psyloft leaders processed her words. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Everything had changed. The Psylofts would never look at themselves, or humanity, the same way again. The days after Dr. Reed's revelation were tense. The Psylofts were not accustomed to questioning their beliefs, and now they were faced with a truth they could hardly bear. They had been created by humans. It was a concept so strange, so foreign to them, that many found it impossible to accept. Lethus, the High Elder, spent hours in his private chamber, staring at the stone tablet Neri had found. The carvings that had once seemed like ancient relics now seemed like a painful reminder of their lost past. As the leader of the Psylofts, Lethus had always believed that they were the gods of the galaxy. But now, the weight of that belief felt like a heavy burden. What does this mean for us? Lethus muttered to himself. Are we nothing more than experiments gone wrong? Creatures with no true purpose of our own? Meanwhile, Neri had become restless. She could see the cracks forming in the unity of the Psylofts. Some embraced the truth, while others rejected it entirely. There were whispers among the people, some calling for rebellion against the truth, while others wanted to embrace humanity as their creators. In the central hall of the Psyloft city, Dr. Reed addressed the council once more. She could see the division among the Psylofts, and it worried her. Some had started to turn against her, unable to accept that their creators were not the powerful gods they had imagined, but a species just like themselves. We are at a crossroads, Dr. Reed said, her voice steady but filled with concern. I understand that this truth is hard to accept, but rejecting it will not change reality. You are still a powerful race, capable of great things. The question now is what you will do with this knowledge. A tall Psyloth elder named Kales, who had remained silent during the previous meetings, finally spoke. What you say is true, but we cannot simply forget the centuries of worship we have given ourselves. We have led galaxies, commanded armies, and built entire empires. How can we just give that up? Dr. Reed nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to give up everything. I'm asking you to evolve. Humanity didn't have all the answers either. We made mistakes, we learned, and we adapted. You are not limited by your past. You can choose to move forward and build something even greater. Lethus stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. But what does that mean for us? Are we to abandon the belief that we are gods? Will we become human? He seemed to struggle with the idea, as if the very notion threatened to shatter the foundation of his identity. Dr. Reed stepped forward, her eyes meeting his. No, you are not human, but you are not gods either. You are something new, a species with incredible potential. Together, we can learn from each other. We can rebuild what was lost. The room grew quiet as the council members absorbed her words. For the first time in generations, the Psylofts were faced with a future that was uncertain. But there was also a glimmer of hope. Perhaps for the first time, they could see themselves as part of something bigger, not as rulers, but as equals, capable of building something new alongside humanity. It wasn't going to be easy, But the Psylofts were beginning to understand that the truth, no matter how painful, was the first step toward a brighter future. The Tyloth people were divided. Some saw the revelation as an opportunity to learn and grow, while others refused to accept the truth. The idea that humans, whom they had long considered primitive, were their creators felt like a betrayal to many. It shook their very identity. And now, the unity of their society was at risk. In the days following Dr. Reed's speech, a group of Xyloth religious leaders began to speak out. They argued that the truth was a lie, a manipulation meant to undermine their greatness. These leaders, known as the Keepers of the Old Ways, had always believed that the Psyloths were the gods of the galaxy. For them, accepting the truth meant destroying everything they had worked for. Lethus, the High Elder, was torn. He could see both sides of the argument. On one hand, he understood Dr. Reed's words. Humanity had made mistakes, and so had the Psylofts. On the other hand, how could they abandon centuries of belief in their divine power? How could they give up everything that had shaped their civilization? Late one evening, Lethus called a secret meeting with the council's most trusted members. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of Psyloth crystals. The tension was thick, and no one spoke at first. Nari was the first to break the silence. The longer we ignore the truth, the more dangerous it becomes. We cannot keep living in denial. We need to face what's real and decide what kind of future we want. But what if that future is one where we no longer rule? Keels, a senior council member, asked sharply. What if humans become our masters instead of equals? Lethus sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't think humanity wants to rule us. Dr. Reed never said that. She wants us to work together. But the truth is, we can't go back to what we were. We have to move forward. The Keepers of the Old Ways were growing more powerful by the day. They had begun to rally the people, preaching that the truth about the Psyloth's origins was a blasphemy. They warned that if they accepted humanity as their creators, the Psyloths would lose their place as the rulers of the galaxy. For many Xyloths, this was a terrifying thought. It was one thing to hear about the truth, but it was another to have it thrust into their faces. One morning, the tension reached a breaking point. A group of keepers, along with their followers, stormed into the central square of the Psyloth capital. They called for the banishment of Dr. Reed and any who supported her. Their chants echoed through the city, a demand for the truth to be denied. Lethus knew that something had to be done. If this rebellion was not stopped, the Psyloths would tear themselves apart. He stood before the council, his expression grim. We must act quickly, he said. If we do nothing, our society will fall apart. We cannot allow the Keepers to control our future with lies. We must show the people that the truth is not something to fear. It is the only way forward. Nari nodded. The Psyloths are a great species, but they are not gods. We have the power to rebuild, but only if we accept the truth, only if we are willing to change. Lethus stepped forward, his voice firm. We will not hide from the truth. It is time for the Psyloths to choose. Do we continue to live in the shadow of false gods, or do we rise to become something greater, side by side with humanity? The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. If the Psyloths were to survive as a united species, they would have to face the truth, and that truth would shape the future of the galaxy. The division among the Psyloths continued to grow. Some factions embraced the idea of a new future, one where they worked alongside humanity. Others, however, rejected the truth with even more passion, calling it a lie that would destroy their very identity. As tensions rose, Lethus realized that a decision had to be made quickly, or their society would tear itself apart. Nari, always driven by the pursuit of knowledge, had not given up on finding more answers. She knew that if they were to truly understand their past, they needed to uncover every hidden detail, no matter how difficult. She began searching through the vast archives of Psyloth history, hoping to find something that would reveal more about their creators, humans, and the lost history that had been erased. One evening, as she dug through ancient texts in the deepest chambers of the Scifi archives, Neri came across something that caught her attention. Tucked away in a hidden vault, far from the public eye, was a series of records. They were old, very old, and their contents were written in a mix of symbols that had been long forgotten by the Xylofs. Neri's heart raced as she examined the documents. These records were not like the rest. They seemed to be from a time before the Xylofs had lost their memories. The writings spoke of a great experiment, an effort by humans to create a superior species that could carry out tasks across the galaxy. The Xylofs were the product of this experiment. As she carefully examined the records, Neri uncovered a shocking detail. The first generation of Xylofs had been engineered to serve humans, but something had gone wrong. The process had left them with a strange flaw. Their memories were locked, and over time, that locked history had been erased completely. The Xylofs had been designed to forget their true purpose, to believe that they were the creators, not the created. "This is it," Neri whispered to herself. She felt both awed and horrified by the discovery. The truth was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The Xylofs were not just created by humans. They were engineered with the specific intention of being forgotten, of having their origins erased from their memories. Neri rushed to Lethis with the new information. The High Elder listened carefully as she explained her findings. His face remained serious, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "This changes everything," Lethis said softly. "So, we were never meant to remember. We were meant to serve, but the plan failed. And now we're left to pick up the pieces of a broken past." Neri nodded. "Exactly. The humans who created you had their own reasons. But in the end, they were not perfect creators either. They tried to control your future, but you were always meant to be more than just tools." Lethis paced around the room, deep in thought. "So, we were made to be slaves, to forget the truth, and to carry on as if we were gods. But now, we know, the humans did not abandon us. We lost ourselves." The weight of this realization was heavy, but it was also freeing. The Xylofs were not doomed to live in the shadows of a false belief. They had the chance to reshape their future, but they would need to work together, accepting the truth of their past, no matter how painful. Lethis turned to Neri. "We must share this discovery with the people. If we are to move forward, we need to bring them the truth, just as we did with Dr. Reed. It is time for the Xylofs to face who we really are." Neri agreed, knowing that this was the only way to bring peace to their broken society. But deep down, she knew that it would take more than just the truth to heal the wounds. The Xylofs had a long road ahead of them, but with humanity's help, they might finally find their place in the galaxy. The truth about the Xylofs' origins was now out in the open. Neri had uncovered the hidden records, revealing that the Xylofs were not gods, but creations of humans. Despite this, the division among the Xylofs had only deepened. The keepers of the old ways had become even more vocal, and their movement was growing. They refused to accept the truth and wanted to hold on to the belief that the Xylofs were divine beings, destined to rule the galaxy. Lethis knew the situation was becoming dangerous. The unity of the Xylof people was slipping away, and if something wasn't done, a civil war could break out. He called an emergency meeting with the council. The room was tense, filled with worried faces. Leaders from both sides of the argument sat in silence, the weight of the moment heavy on their shoulders. Neri stood beside Lethis, her eyes scanning the room. "We cannot let the Keepers control our future," Lethis began, his voice firm. "We know the truth now. We cannot go back to believing that we are gods. But that doesn't mean we are weak or inferior. We have the power to choose our future. It is time for us to rise above the past and build something greater with humanity." A murmur of agreement came from those who had embraced the truth, but there were still many who disagreed. One of the keepers stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You speak of rising above the past, But what is left for us if we are nothing more than creations? The keeper said harshly, "We are the rulers of the galaxy. To say that we were made by humans is to deny everything we have ever accomplished." Lethus looked at the keeper with a calm expression. "You are mistaken. Our worth is not tied to who created us, but to what we do with the power we have. If we continue to cling to false beliefs, we will only destroy ourselves. We must accept that we were made by humans, but that does not define us. What defines us is how we choose to move forward." The keeper's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. The council room fell silent again. It was clear that the debate was far from over, but Lethus could see the cracks in the keeper's arguments. The truth was undeniable, and no amount of denial would change it. In the weeks that followed, the tension only grew. The keepers rallied their followers, calling for a return to the old ways. They preached that the Psylofts had been betrayed by the truth and that they should return to their divine status. Meanwhile, Lethus and his supporters worked tirelessly to share the truth with the rest of the Psylofts, showing them the records Neri had uncovered and explaining the history of their creation. As the conflict deepened, Dr. Reed, who had become a trusted ally to Lethus, spoke to the council once again. The Psylofts cannot keep fighting themselves. You have the chance to rebuild, but only if you unite. Humanity is not your enemy. We are your allies, and together we can achieve something greater than either of our species could alone. The words of Dr. Reed rang out, and for the first time, some of the keepers seemed to hesitate. Could they really continue to fight against the truth? Could they reject the possibility of working with humanity to create a new future? Lethus stepped forward, his voice calm but full of determination. The future is not something we can run from. It is something we must build together. If we choose to remain divided, we will fall. But if we choose unity, we will rise stronger than ever. The room remained silent, but Lethus knew the decision had to come soon. The Psylofts stood at a crossroads, and only time would tell if they would embrace the truth or continue down the path of denial. One thing was certain: the galaxy was about to change forever. The conflict between the Psylofts factions had reached its peak. The keepers of the old ways had grown bolder, holding public rallies and spreading their message. Their words echoed across the Psyloft cities, calling for the return of the old beliefs and denouncing the truth about their origins. On the other side, Lethus and his supporters worked tirelessly to convince the people that the future lay in unity and acceptance of the truth. The stakes were higher than ever. In the heart of the Psyloft capital, tensions boiled over. A large gathering of Psylofts had convened in the central square, where Lethus was preparing to speak once more. The air was thick with anxiety as crowds of Psylofts, divided in their beliefs, filled the square. The keepers stood on one side, their chants echoing in the distance, while Lethus and his followers stood on the other, determined to make their voices heard. Dr. Reed stood beside Lethus, her expression serious. She had been with the Psylofts through their darkest days, helping them understand the truth about their past. But now, the battle was no longer about knowledge. It was about identity. Could the Psylofts accept who they truly were, or would they continue to fight against the truth and each other? Lethus stepped forward, his tall figure towering over the crowd. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, some filled with hope, others with anger. The keepers had stirred deep emotions in the Psyloft people, but Lethus knew that it was time to face them. "We stand at a crossroads," Lethus began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We are not gods. We were created by humans, but that does not make us any less powerful, any less important. Our worth is not tied to our origins, but to what we do with the life we have now. We are not slaves to our past. We are the Psylofts, and we can choose our future." The crowd grew quiet as Lethus continued. "The keepers want us to return to the old ways, to cling to a lie that will only destroy us. But we cannot afford to live in the shadows of false gods. We must face the truth and embrace the future, together with humanity. Only then will we be truly free." From the other side of the square, A loud voice interrupted. It was a keeper, standing on a raised platform. "You speak of unity, Lethis, but what unity can there be when we are nothing but creations? How can we trust the humans who made us, only to abandon us in the dark? They never cared for us. They used us as tools." The keeper's words struck a chord with many in the crowd. Some Xyloths shouted in agreement, their anger boiling over. Lethis knew that this would not be an easy fight. The truth was hard to accept, especially when it went against everything they had believed for so long. Dr. Reed stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The humans did not abandon you. We were not perfect creators, but we did not forget you. We made mistakes, and we learned from them. Now we offer you the chance to build something greater, to rise above your past, and work together for a better future." The keepers were silenced, and for the first time, the crowd seemed to pause. The air was thick with uncertainty, but there was also a flicker of hope. Could the Xyloths really overcome their divisions? Could they accept their true origins and move forward? Lethis raised his hand, quieting the crowd. "It is time for the Xyloths to choose. Will we continue to fight among ourselves, or will we choose unity and a new future with humanity? The choice is ours." The square was silent, the weight of Lethis' words hanging in the air. No one knew what the future would hold, but one thing was clear. The Xyloths were standing at the edge of a new era. It was up to them to decide if they would embrace the truth and work with humanity, or if they would continue down the path of division and denial. The tension in the central square lingered, but the atmosphere was no longer one of anger. The words of Lethis and Dr. Reed had begun to settle in the minds of the Xyloth people. As the crowd stood in silence, they were no longer shouting in defiance or chanting in protest. They were listening. For the first time in centuries, the Xyloths were truly considering the future. Lethis stood tall, his eyes sweeping over the gathered crowd. The keepers of the old ways had fallen quiet. Their movement, once so full of strength and fervor, was now facing the truth that they could no longer ignore. The truth about who they really were. "We are not gods," Lethis said again, his voice carrying through the crowd. "We were created by humans, and that truth doesn't diminish us, it frees us. We no longer need to live in the shadow of a lie. We can stand tall as who we truly are." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't filled with anger anymore. It was filled with uncertainty and the weight of realization. The Xyloths had always been powerful, but now they understood that their power came from more than just their physical strength. It came from their ability to adapt, to learn, and to choose their path. The crowd began to stir. Some Xyloths moved forward, drawn to Lethis and his supporters, their expressions showing signs of acceptance. Others remained hesitant, unsure of what embracing the truth would mean for them. Dr. Reed stepped forward beside Lethis. "The truth is not an enemy, it is a gift," she said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "It gives you the chance to build something new, to learn from the mistakes of the past, and to join with humanity in creating a future where we can all thrive." Her words rang out, echoing in the hearts of the Xyloths. Some, who had once rejected the idea of working with humans, now began to see the potential of a united future. The keepers of the old ways, though still reluctant, were beginning to falter. They could see the tide turning, and they were unsure if they could hold onto their beliefs any longer. After a long pause, one of the keepers, an elder named Varric, stepped forward. His eyes were tired, but there was something different about his stance now. Perhaps we were wrong," he said quietly, his voice carrying to the crowd. "We have always believed that we were meant to rule, but we never stopped to ask ourselves why. Maybe it is time we face the truth and accept the help of those who created us." Lethis nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. The division that had threatened to tear their society apart was slowly beginning to heal. The Xyloths were beginning to accept that their true power lay in their ability to evolve and to make choices, not in their past beliefs. "We will move forward together," Lethis declared. "With humanity by our side, We will rebuild what was lost. We will no longer be trapped by the lies of the past. This is the beginning of a new era for the Xylofs. The crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and quiet murmurs of agreement. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The Xylofs were no longer prisoners of their old beliefs. They were free to choose their future. As Lethis and Dr. Reed stood side by side, they knew the road ahead would not be easy. There were still many challenges to overcome. But for the first time, the Xylofs had a chance to embrace their true selves and build a future not just for their species, but for all species, together with humanity. Let me know if you'd like any changes or want to continue with the next part. The days after the rally in the central square were filled with change. The Xylofs were no longer divided by their beliefs. While the keepers of the old ways still held on to some of their doubts, they began to understand that the truth was not something to fear. They were not gods, but they were powerful in their own right. And with that realization, they could finally move forward. Lethis and Dr. Reed worked together, leading the efforts to unite their people. They focused on educating the Xylofs, showing them the potential of what could be achieved by working alongside humanity. The Xylofs, once hesitant, were now eager to learn. They saw the progress humanity had made, and they were inspired. The first joint project between humans and Xylofs was the construction of a new city. It would be a symbol of their unity, a place where both species could live and work together. The Xylofs brought their advanced knowledge of architecture, while humanity shared their expertise in technology and innovation. Together, they built a city that was unlike anything either species had ever seen, a perfect blend of both their strengths. But it wasn't just the physical buildings that were being built. There was something deeper happening. A new understanding was growing between the two species. The Xylofs learned about human culture, their history, and their capacity for compassion. And humans learned about the Xylofs' rich history and their potential for greatness. As the new city took shape, so did the relationship between the two species. What was once a divide built on false beliefs and fear was now a bridge of trust and cooperation. One evening, as the last pieces of the city's grand hall were being placed, Lethis stood beside Dr. Reed, looking out over the skyline. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the new city, and for the first time, Lethis felt a sense of peace. "We did it," Dr. Reed said softly, her voice full of awe. "We've built something beautiful. Together." Lethis nodded, a small smile forming on his face. "It's more than just the city. It's the future. We have a chance to truly grow now, to become something even greater than we were before." Dr. Reed looked at him. "You're not alone in this anymore, Lethis. Humanity will be with you every step of the way." Lethis gazed out over the city, his thoughts heavy with the weight of everything they had overcome. The Xylofs had once believed they were the creators of all life. Now, they understood that they were part of something much bigger, part of a galaxy that was full of diversity, strength, and potential. And with humanity by their side, they could do anything. "We've come so far," Lethis said, "but this is just the beginning. We will make sure the mistakes of the past never happen again." Dr. Reed smiled. "And together, we will make sure of that." As the night sky stretched out above them, the stars twinkling in the distance, Lethis and Dr. Reed knew that they had begun a new chapter in the story of the Xylofs and humanity. It wouldn't be easy, but with trust, understanding, and unity, there was no limit to what they could achieve. For the first time, the Xylofs were free, not just from their past beliefs, but from the chains that had bound them for so long. They were free to choose their destiny, and together with humanity, they would create a future that would change the galaxy forever.